Go.
Welcome to the annual general meeting for the Association for Canadian Education Resources.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're so happy to welcome you to our 2022 ACER annual general meeting. We're glad that you could all make it this afternoon. We are also celebrating, we're really happy, our 35 years of ACER's planting program and still growing. First, we'd like to do our land acknowledgement. We'll begin with saying that we are meeting on land that has been inhabited by Indigenous people from the beginning. We are grateful for the land, the water, the flora and fauna, and the people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. The Carrying Place Trails of the Humber River, where ACER has established planting and measuring programs, allows students to connect to nature in places which hold significance to First Nations people. ACER has members who work and practice throughout Ontario, which in the Huron-Wyandot word, meaning Great Lakes, and in Iroquois languages from Scandinario means beautiful water. Most of our team is speaking to you from Toronto, and we wish to acknowledge the ancestral traditional territories of the Ojibwe, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and in particular the Mississaugas of the New Credit, whose territory we are gathered on. We recognize and deeply appreciate their historic and ongoing connection to Toronto. We also recognize the contributions of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples that have made both shaping and strengthening the community. And we hope that we can also engage with the First Nations to contribute back. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and historic importance of Indigenous people must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective movement and commitment. We celebrate the leadership of Indigenous groups and guardians that are committed to the conservation, protection, and management of lands across the country. And now I would like to introduce to you Alice Castleman, the founder of ACER, and she will speak first.
Welcome to our 35th annual meeting, a virtual one. I think it's our second virtual. And we will be having an in-person planning at least in October. So keep your eyes open for an invitation to in-person in early October. So I want to show you some highlights from our 35 years. Lots more details in between the cracks, but here are some of the highlights. We began with an inspiration from Walter Tavel when I was on a field trip with him on the Niagara Escarpment. And he taught us how to read the landscape where we were standing in Violet Hill looking over the rolling fields of Ontario and could see the glacial spillway from that vantage point and know that that's probably where the 400 was, the further south. Anyway, that got us going. And since then, we're developing programs inspired by people and thinking ahead of where they might want to go. So the next slide, please. This is where we got our start with the federal funding to establish 1 hectare plots. This is after Rio de Janeiro. And we were following the League of Kejimkujik's first plot in Canada. And they were going across Canada, and we put in community ones along the Niagara Escarpment and got a north-south gradient for data and changing of forest biodiversity. And they're still going, and then now there's well over a dozen in this area, and some other places up to North Bay, for example, is our latest one. So that program is still going. It's called Go Global. And this is in Osabo in 2015, where we're putting in a plot. Next slide. Well, after a while, people wanted to do something more planting. So we started and applied for and got federal funding through EcoAction to put in something like 2,700 trees and 70 species in 6 biodiversity experiments for long-term monitoring. Here we're using blue plastic and everywhere, but that's long gone now. In the latest plantings, we use cocoa mats and none of the plastics. And we do tag. That's we started the tagging system, wrapped around a brick and a wire that showed out of the ground with a tag we made. So that's been going on since 2002. And next slide. During that time, from 2002 and 2008, we're pushing all kinds of boundaries. And the new publication with Environment Canada follow-up, opening their files to us, was Solar UV in Our World. Is a lovely booklet, still available. The only thing is the tool for measurement has changed because the index has changed up to 11 or 12 now. And that's a Canadian index. It was developed by us and our people in Environment Canada. Very proud of that and how we worked it all into lesson plans in that book. And we are also host guests of the federal government Climate Change Impacts and Adaptation Department to go to Panama, where they established one of the early plots with the Smithsonian. We even helped them find the plot and remeasure, training some university students from University of Panama. And then later in the year, Don McIver and his team, Neil Comer and Marianne Karsh, produced a book called Gaps, and we are mentioned in there with our protocols. Marianne also did 14 scientific posters for our conference in Panama, and 7 or so of those include ACER's work. So we were quite pleased with this kind of research and production of things that be useful. Over time, we've done some more. Next slide, please. Well, working on the Humber Arboretum led to higher prices for buses and gas and so on at that time. And teachers said we want to do something in our schoolyards. So we actually developed a program and put it in place. It's called Planting for Change for schoolyards, one at a time. And this is one of the early ones. We got funding from FEF, the Toronto Dominion Friends of the Environment. This is a team of the Geography Department at Oakville, Trafalgar, headed by the head of geography, who was a master gardener. So we had rototill, that clay that you sounded pounded behind them and leading to the field between parking lot and field, well trampled and packed. So rototilling and mulching twice a year, and then waiting for the trees were planted closely together to make a forest. And there you see even 5 years or so later. And now it's incredible to see. You can drive by there at Oakville Trafalgar High School in Devon in Oakville. So that led to more, of course, and Sadi will tell you more about this program. Next, please. Lots of fun, a lot of work to get it done. It takes about a year to get it in place, and then we get it planted with everybody having fun, and she'll talk more about that. Next slide, please. Well, that led to working on the monitoring in larger areas with TRCA. And so with TRCA, Vince had been with us as part-time at Humber, and he was now become full-time guy at TRCA, planting along the watercourse of the Humber and the Mimico, the Etobicoke Creek. So then this book that they put together, and we helped with pictures of young trees, fabulous, fabulous thing online now. And we put in the protocol. So not only do you know what to plant, where to plant, what it looks like, but how to measure it in and then keep on going with the tagging system. So that's really a proud accomplishment of ours as well in the publications. Next, please. That led, all of these seem to evolve one from the other that seemed to be needed at the time, envisioning the future. This is 13 conservation authorities putting in 1,000 trees through the provincial government funding, except for the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, which planted 20,000 trees from that cleanup fund. And we measured 2,000 trees there for long-term monitoring, and their experiments along the plantings they had all over the place in their region. So now we go from Windsor to Cornwall in sort of a north-east gradient, which is what I planned on hopscotching along, so we could have a really good system for analysis of changes in forest biodiversity as it went from the south in Windsor up to Cornwall. And the Raisin River is the one that runs through Cornwall. That's why it's called Raisin. Okay, we're bilingual down there. Okay, next slide, please. Well, this then led to discussions about what we could do at the community level without running to a conservation authority. And what was going on in municipalities, particularly Mississauga. And in conversations with Jonathan Brown in Coburg, who poked us and pushed us to do GIS work, I went to the city of Mississauga GIS people and asked them to put together the series of maps, layer the maps that we requested. And they did. They had to go back and find the original files, but they did put it together with layers of low tree canopy, high social needs, high student poverty, police activity, neighborhood density, newcomer density, all sorts of layers that made sense in the social network and the tree canopy. Well, it turns out a lot of these areas are in industrial marginal lands around the airport or other places that have been designated industrial. So next slide, please. This is what happened when you start to poke into those layers and look at them individually or in pairs. Here's the low tree canopy on the left with the green dots and the well-being. And you'll see an incredible correlation. Then if you move over to the next slide, you'll see how that correlates. And then the last slide, which was just during COVID uncovered, we could have told them where COVID was going to hit almost. Look at that map. It's correlating that those data we had on our maps with COVID because the conditions where people are living. A lot of high towers, a lot of essential workers, multi-generational, small spaces, and that's what was showing up there. We're very proud of that whole initiative, and it was sort of eye-opener to everybody. Nobody had ever done that. It reminded me that as a teacher, we used to use transparencies to layer things like the circulatory system and other things together. So it was no big deal for me to move from transparencies to digitizing these layers in GPS. Next slide, please. So here we are in the Project Crossroads, Bramalea, where we had everybody there, that TRCA, there's Vince over there, and Catherine Soplet with the community activists and people from the local area, including support from the private landowner. And the private landowner could not be planted by TRCA unless it was through ACER, because conservation authorities can't plant on private land. So this is a big landmark for everybody to learn to go through our charity to get trees in the ground. And here we have on private land, planting of a fairly decent sized tree. And they did special things to make this work to survive, special mycorrhiza dosage as they went planted. Next slide, please. And here we are with our partners in crime at the planting day. Cleanup crew were working in the creek. I think it was like 600 kilograms or something huge came out of there, grocery carts and bicycles. And then meanwhile, we had the same grant, gave money to plant in the park at Folkestone Park, owned by the city, and helped by the grade 5s and so on over at the Folkestone Public School. So we had a lot of fun doing that. Unfortunately, the vandals love to run through this park and do stupid stuff, as kids will do, or young people looking for some trouble. And so we've replanted, and then we're now living with the consequences of that vandalism. And the kids in the public school are devastated. But everybody lives around there who is in this low tree canopy, high social needs area. So we just live with the consequences and experiment in community work. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oops, can I do this? No. Hello. So I think we might be moving over to the current thing. I'm not sure where we're finishing off, but this is Sadia. I want to introduce Sadia. You never had a good introduction before. I'm so delighted to have Sadia working with us. We met in 2005 up at Humber planting trees with a class of hers. And we've been keeping in touch, volunteering with us ever since. And Sadia now has her doctorate. And so we're thrilled to have her working with us as much as she can and in many different ways. So here's Sadia, Dr. Sadia Butt now.
Thank
And
you, Alice.
she just came in from the field this morning too. She'll tell you about that probably as well. So welcome to here at the present now.
Thank you, Alice. And thanks for going over all those wonderful programs. And I'm honored that I'm able to present ACER's programs and partnerships to you. ACER has much to celebrate for the meaningful impacts it has on environmental education and raising awareness about the importance of trees, especially in a changing climate. So here's an overview of our engagement activities that I will be speaking to. First, I'm going to talk to you about our Planting for Change program, which was established in 2007 and very popular with schools across the GTA. In 2021, we were able to get students back out in the field to build their outdoor climate change monitoring labs as COVID restrictions were eased. We were able to plant in 3 schools, St. Catharines of Siena School, Lancaster Public School, and Settlers Green Public School as well. A typical P4C day starts with an early morning delivery of trees. Our new supplier currently is Verbinans for 45 shrubs and 16 trees. So first, the holes need to be dug, and they're usually older grades that provide their muscle power to break the ground. At St. Catherine of Siena, restrictions were very tight when they started, and only 1 grade was permitted out into the field. So their board provided pre-dug holes using a mechanical auger, which you can see in that bottom right corner, which was quite exciting to watch. And some schools who realize that their soil needs amendment also add either triple mix or some organic matters to it. Student participation in planting the trees and shrubs gives them hands-on, real-time learning of the needs for proper planting and establishing a tree. And we teach them the importance of protecting trees as they grow. They learn proper mulching techniques, as it is critical for root protection, holding back competition from weeds and grass, as well as human damage through lawnmowers and weed eaters. I'm sorry. Yeah, we should slide through. I forgot the word next in between. So you can see some of those activities that the students do that I just mentioned. And that's right, mulching. And then the last thing that they do to protect the trees from the elements and the wind is our tall stock are staked and protected with tree guards. Next, slide 10. The whole process not only teaches them care of trees, but also how to work with each other, cooperation and problem solving, such as heavy water buckets, how to handle them and maneuver them across the field, using materials at hand to improvise. Especially when there are other children involved that are younger, you can see the compassion come out of the older grades to help them be part of the whole program. They come out of it with a sense of accomplishment and pride. Next, please. Then, after building their lab, the process of understanding how trees grow is further entrenched in their minds. They learn how to measure using standardized force mensuration techniques and become determined to measure accurately. I've seen them have discussions on, no, I think it's 0.5 or it's 0.8 centimeters. Then there's a smiles, and then the sense of place and accomplishment is the human result. And this is the final product on the field. The program empowers schools and the Green Sparks to transform their space and maximize their learning experiences for the students. And this has been done in over 60 schools. ACER also engages the community. After COVID, people needed to reconnect with neighbors and with nature. We applied for the Healthy Community Initiatives grant from the Canadian Communities Foundations of Canada. And we work with Bill Godfrey's People Against Litter and Community Living Young Adults to remove litter and prep planting spaces. In these same Human Community Initiatives pots, we planted over 500 trees in 2021 in the fall, and then 500 trees again in the spring. In addition, we worked with Blooming Boulevards, who have donated wildflowers to put in the understory of these plantings in about 10 different parks throughout the Dixie-Dundas area in Mississauga. On August the 5th, 2021, UTM interns and CSA students came out to measure the 35 trees planted in 2020 at Folkestone Public Park in Brampton. We also had a celebration at the Chelsea Gardens in Knightsbridge King Cross location on September the 25th. And these trees were remeasured and mulched, and participants were able to participate in planting new trees. We also had a second event to finish off all the measuring with high school students that were able to then complete their community hours with ACER. Slide 16. In 2021, we were fortunate to be able to host students in high school and universities. Students received training to do various jobs for ACER. Being during COVID, they found themselves, for the most part, meeting on Zoom and working online. Yet they were able to produce and revamp our teacher resource documents, learn about and measure trees, and then also create reports and documents of their experiences. ACER also hosted webinars and training sessions. The Riparian Rangers webinar can be found on our website, where Stephanie Smith from TRCA talks about how the details that she has learned from monitoring her trees, which help her save time and money, and planting the appropriate tree species in the locations without having to have high mortality rates. We also worked with Spruce Lab to support First Nations Missouri Beak Green Infrastructure Training Program. We hosted 9 students and taught them about Humber Arboretum's programs, the biopots, as well as the planting pots for changing and the riparian reforestation areas. ACER also understands the need to interface current technologies with our monitoring program. Under the guidance of Fazal Khan, students were able to develop a monitoring app that also allows individuals and groups to log trees or learn about trees in any given area. We will now have Sophia talk about ACER's Tree Tracker app.
Today we're at a park near Bramalea, mulching and measuring the trees that some of the volunteers planted last year. By measuring them, we can see how much they grew and if the species is doing well here. So right now we're taking some measurements, and then you can see that we're also mulching.
Today is an exciting day because we're back 1 year later after the trees were planted last fall. And now we're mulching them to give them winter boots, keep them warm, the roots warm so they don't freeze, and measuring how much they've grown this year.
And we had the people who live in the towers as well as people in the area come in and plant about 40 trees last year. And now it's time to prepare them for the winter. And so we've got students who are mulching and measuring.
I'm using tree trackers to track trees right now. It's so easy to get their current location just as measure these trees and just put them inside our measuring system. Before, I think we were just using a chart paper to fill in all these blanks with a pencil, but then it's scary because if rain comes, this paper is gonna get wet, and so we can't really we'll lose all our data soon. And then people really have to transcribe this data just as measure them in current centimeters and upload the data to an Excel sheet. Rather, we have a database where you can see all the data for all the trees around this area.
So measuring a tree and mulching them is so simple, especially now that we've got tree trackers. It's so easy to find our current location and find exactly what data we need. All the information buttons tell us exactly how to measure it, whether it's the root color, the crown diameter, and so on. All of it just makes it so easy to measure them and having a blast.
Thank you very much. That was really good to see the whole program again in such a short time. So at this time, Acer would like to thank Namisha Besnayaka for her contribution and her keen eye for detail. I know personally that Namisha is a super organized person who ran a very tight ship in her time here. She has been generous even after her resignation and starting school in offering guidance even as she has gone back. I am really impressed with the way that she kept things organized, because I've had to try and learn the ropes of all the sorts of tasks that she did. And because Acer is so diverse, and it has many aspects to just the administration side of things, Namisha, you're a very valued person here. So we do hope that we get to work with you again in the future, and we appreciate your contribution. We have a certificate and a token of our appreciation, which we hope to get to her. And I'm just very blessed that we have someone like Namisha associated with Acer. And Alice will have a few words later. Thank you very much, and it's time for Alice to speak.
Give this small token of our deep appreciation for her outstanding support with grace under pressure and precision tracking of what we were doing, everything we were doing, including the knowledge transfer in detail over the time that she was transferring it to Sadia. And then we were finding out what was missing and adding in later. So she's been great. And we wish her all the best in her new career, chosen career of accounting. Thrilled to bits that she's been able to move into something that she grew a little bit in Acer and in accounting and a lot as a person. So we're thrilled to bits to have this small presentation and token of our appreciation. All the best and good luck in everything you do. So now we move into the future. We were, actually leaving the past and putting a foot in the future. So the idea here was, after we were doing all of this work, monitoring vegetation and working with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, it came to our attention that the Toronto Waterfront Trust was actually having a contest. So in the winter time during COVID, we brought together 4 different specialists to work on Saturday mornings over months to put together this proposal, which I named My Dawn, Dawn being the river we were working on. And here's an introduction to the team.
We're so excited to be part of the My Dawn's project, because we want to gamify the citizen science project so that kids and families will want to going out and monitor the natural environment around the Portland with fun and engagement.
It's important that we understand how to engage our residents in looking at climate change issues at the local level. And I'm really excited about this project in that we can support scientists with everyday actions on the ground using open data and digital tools.
The most important thing is to connect the citizen science observations to the real scientist data so that we can enhance materials and data that are being collected by the career scientists and involve citizens and volunteer observers over time.
I'm looking to bring to this project the technology component coupled with the data visualization in order to create citizen science models and use them in a more compelling and interactive way.
We're so looking forward to bringing new technology and gamification to this exciting opportunity. Thank you.
So we did this and we submitted the proposal. We came as runners up to a bunch of engineers. And the idea was we got $10,000 as our prize, and we divided it so we could keep on going. And this is what the next level is. Very exciting. I want to bring to your attention something going from 2 dimensions, which you know, length and width, but now we're going to the 3rd dimension, and we're calling it digital twinning. This means that from the data we collect on the ground standing with our back to a water monitoring station, for example, and taking pictures of what we see, we can actually twin it and also have real-time data from the water body flowing past behind us from the TRCA. So they can help with flooding and changes in the vegetation around that riverbank. So what's happened now is that this three-dimensional approach has allowed what we call digital twinning. And that is based on a fabulous system developed by NOAA, our oceans people in the States and now international, that they are actually, we were started out looking at the depths of oceans using this system. It's called the light detection and ranging. So if you send a laser pulse out and you get an answer back, you get a distance. That's not news. But the point is now we're able to do that virtually as well as in 2D. So now we're able, with a virtual twin, to play around with moving buildings and different trees and exponential unexpected flooding and where we should put roads or not, and so on and so on. So many things happening with ability to play in a third dimension with the digital twin. And that's now being picked up by really the leading edge municipalities. And a whole country did this, Grenada. And I think the next slide might take us there to show you, yes, this you could go online and have a look at. These people have done layering of the images. So you can look at earthquake vulnerability zones. You can look at absolutely so many different things through this lens of distancing. And it is an incredible place to go and look at. So this is Grenada, the whole island done this way. And we can do this in municipalities, and Coburg is trying to do this, and Sustainability Coburg is getting into this. And so it's taken us a long way into the future of showing municipalities what they can do. However, here's where ACER comes in. We can ground truth all of their data about trees and water. I mean, ground truthing means what's really there, not from a distance from the laser thing. And so we started that working with Sustainability Coburg, Jonathan Brown. Anyway, what's happened as well at the same time kind of is the next slide, which takes us in a new direction. Because we have been actually measuring trees with inventorying their campuses at Davis and then Trafalgar and newest one, Hazel McCallion campus. We now have about 5 years of data of Davis tree inventories. This means that last year or two, when this group here of young people doing the course with environmental controls and looking for field experience, hands-on training, undertook about 400, all the 400 trees or so on one campus and measured them all and did other kinds of things about protocols that I laid on during their time there, new to us, which was rating the mulching that they were doing, so to keep the trees healthy, and then calculating how much carbon was stored in these trees. The concept being, if we know how much carbon is being stored in the trees annually, we can then look at how much the greenhouse gases are coming out of the buildings. So we looked at doing that to see if they would be able to write down their pollution tax from the greenhouse gas emissions with using trees, the natural assets. Instead of spending thousands of millions of dollars on retrofits with geothermal and solar panels and triple pane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they could save some money by planting more trees. And we had Stephanie Smith do that for her work. And now we're looking at campuses to do this. Well, after 5 or 6 years of this, Sustainability Department said, oh my goodness, we must give ACER an invitation to a conference, a webinar for our colleges and institutions and CGEPs. Next slide, please. So we had found out when we went to look at municipalities and municipal and school boards and institutions, colleges, universities, there was nothing happening between the silos. And now we're so specialized in everything that there's silos everywhere, even cubicle to cubicle. in these big offices. So operations had their greenhouse gas emissions, and the programs had their tree data. And never the twain would meet. So ACER said, let's see how we can connect these silos, bridge the gap. So when we were invited to the seminar or the webinar, next slide, please, we were able to say natural assets appreciate in value as the trees grow over the years if they're kept healthy, and maybe as many as 250 or more years if you plant the right species and they're healthy. And the built assets start to depreciate as soon as you turn the key in the door, just like when you're walking off the car lot and you build your new car, it's gone down at least $1,000 or more, just that. So we tried to impress on them what they could do if they took on ACER's protocols and trained their people and their students or whatever to measure their trees and look after them and plant more. And now Sheridan Davis has hired somebody to do this, and they are planting more. So I met the young person who's taking this on. What a thrill to be invited back after all these years of collecting data, because we knew it was important to the kids, the international students who came through this program, environmental controls, with Pauline Dyke, who's a professor. So, and that was really the latest breakthrough for ACER, leading the way, as Madeline says, the bleeding edge. So that's about it for me. I think it's the last slide, perhaps. Oh, this is the sort of thing they're doing now. I love that. Why conduct a tree inventory after all these years? Next slide, please. And here we are reaping the benefits of all these years. Thank you for this video.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Allison, and greetings from Hong Kong. I was an ACER intern in 2017, and I also wrote a research paper on planning for change during my internship. My internship was already 5 years ago, and that's also exactly why I'm so thankful for this chance to be reconnecting with ACER again. I'm so happy to know that ACER has so many new and exciting programs ever since I left, and that ACER is still active despite the pandemic. I think it's a really precious thing to have. And also, I heard from Alice that there will be an ACER alumni group soon, so I'm really looking forward to be a part of it. This coming fall, I'm starting a master's in environmental management in Hong Kong. So really huge thanks to Alice for giving me this opportunity, for helping me recommend me to the universities so that I get the offers. Before I go, I want to say a huge congrats to ACER's anniversary this year. I hope that it'll be a better year coming up. And well, anyway, stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
And now a young man I'd like to introduce, Sergio, is the young man in grade 8 who's taken on ACER's challenges. And during the winter, he went out and measured trees and collected the data on 30 or 40 trees in his neighborhood. But then as spring was approaching, I asked him to start a series of walks to help discover spring. And this is his first video, and he's done several since, and we're going to knit them together for an RTO webinar next spring. So take it away there, Sergio.
All right, so as you can see behind me, this appears to be a bright yellow bush, but what this bright yellow bush is really a collection of a bunch of flowers, and these flowers are your next goal for the spring flower walk. Now, the name of these flowers is the forsythia bush, and as you can see, they look a bit like a banana peel that's been peeled into 4 parts. So it should be pretty easy to identify from the color and the distinct shape of the flowers. And if you live in a neighborhood with a lot of houses, these should be pretty easy to find. Just a quick walk around your neighborhood and you should be able to see some. Now, what you're going to do when you find the forsythia is you're going to take one of the flowers, like I have here, and you're going to maybe use a magnifying glass, or if you have one, maybe a microscope, to kind of take a look inside the flower and see just what parts you can find, and maybe take a few notes on what you see. I don't know. And there are a few parts you want to look for. Obviously, there is the corolla, which is essentially all the petals. After that, there is the sepal, or the calyx, which is essentially what protects all the developing parts of the flower, like perhaps the flower bud. After that, there's the stamen, which is the male part of the flower, and that is what contains all the pollen, for like the bees and other pollinators to collect. The last part you might want to look for is the pistil. That is the female part of the flower, and that contains all the ovaries, which is a part of the flower that helps it reproduce. So hopefully you are able to find a forsythia on your spring flowers walk. You are able to identify some of the parts.
Thanks, Sir Joe. And now I'd like to bring in Madeline Webb, our chair, who will wrap us up.
Hi, everyone. Well, it's my pleasure to do the wrap up. And I think we have seen that ACER has been very busy this year, but over the years, there's been a tremendous development in the programming and the sophistication of what ACER does. So you heard then that in the past, we developed programs, we did the hectare plots, we started getting into the schools, and we then moved on to perfect our planting techniques, getting rid of plastic in the planting process, for instance, and working to enlarge the number of schools that were involved, the number of 1 hectare plots that were done, and the partnerships that we were able to engage with, the partners like the TRCA and many others. So that was our development. And now into the future, we've heard that we're using technology. We've got tree trackers that were developed by high school students under Fazel's leadership. And we're very excited about that. And also the 3-dimensional LiDAR work seems very interesting. Looking forward to learning more about that. Now, the other thing that we're doing besides partnerships is we're looking a little bit at developing our social enterprise work, and Alice has started with the talking to the colleges and CEGEP, and we're hoping that we may be able to bring some of our knowledge to these institutions, so that we can help with the carbon calculations that they need for their net zero audits. So not to minimize also, over time, the number of students that Alice and all the people involved, Namisha and now Sadia and others, have the time has been spent training students and providing a way for them to get hands-on experience that helps them with their professional goals. This is extremely important, of course, for the next generation. So just to say that the board is very pleased with the progress over the 35 years. It seems it just has flashed by, and we're looking forward to even more in the future. So now, thank you so much for attending this part of the program. And as you know, there is a second part of the program, and you should have a link to the second part, which will be starting in about 15 minutes at 3 o'clock. And we have time. We have a special song that was developed called "Planting for Change," which we're going to play soon. And then we encourage you to go to the link to the Google Meet for the business portion of the AGM. This is very important, especially for members, because this is a legal requirement for ACER, which is a registered charity. Thanks so much, everybody, and see you at 3. Bye for now.